Today is good news, bad news? Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, World Analytics Post, covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Today, I'm joined again by our property insider, Edwin Almeida. Hello, Edwin.
Hello, Martin. How you going?
Yeah, hanging in there. You?
Mate, I'm just I'm hanging out for a haircut. I've got two choices: either get a haircut real soon, or I'm going to go, grow a mullet or something like that. It's just one of those things. Go back to the old days of the my mid-20s when I was had hair down to my shoulders and a beard, and everybody thought I was a Colombian drug dealer whenever I travelled overseas.
Excellent. Well, I actually invested in some electric clippers the other week, and so I gave myself a haircut, which actually didn't turn out too badly, but it's a bit scary.
No, I think you did a great job, mate. I'm going down there for how much do you charge?
I'll do it virtually.
Exactly.
And charge virtually nothing. Now, there's some really interesting developments relating to open houses, right? And I'm fascinated. And did you see one of the tweets the other day saying it's amazing that in New South Wales they've basically opened up the property sector to home visits before they've opened up churches. That tells you something about the relative priorities.
That's right, and they've opened up, and you still can't have a wedding with more than 5 people, and in a funeral you can't have more than 10 people present. But yet we are going to have open for inspections, and we are going to have auctions. Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, why did they go down that path? Maybe the powers to be and the REI and the government, maybe they just got sick and tired of the online auctions. The pitiful performance of the online auctions. I mean, I've been watching them week in, week out, and my God, I hope that the regulators are taking note of what the auctioneers are promising potential purchasers, because they are some of those statements that they're making are absolutely criminal. I mean, apart from giving financial advice without an AFSL license, it's absolutely horrendous what you hear them talking about, promising Badgerys Creek Airport going to be running before 10 years. I still haven't seen any plans for how they're going to transport the fuel from Kurnell to Badgerys Creek Airport yet, and let alone these auctioneers are talking about being open by now, because Badgerys Creek Airport's going to open up in under 10 years, by now, because the property market's hit bottom and it's going to rise again. It's a great investment, great location. I mean, all this financial advice that I've been hearing, absolutely horrendous. Maybe that's the reason, Martin. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting, as you say, in those online environments, I think they're getting away with even more than they would if they were actually in public, on show, as it were. But unfortunately, I still think that some prospective buyers are still being lured into the market at a time when it's clearly a level of very great uncertainty. And most of the experts and most of the economists are suggesting prices are going to fall, not rise. I mean, there are one or two who are still very bullish, but there are not many.
Yeah, it was interesting. About 3 weeks ago, we were hearing some of the main economists from the banks talking about a 10% falls. Now now some of the same economists are now talking about 20% falls. My mate Louis, he's already talking 30%, and if he's talking 30, we know we're going to get closer to the 50. I'd say could even float even a lot further down. But interesting how if the key indicators that my favourite property analyst, the hedonic late to the party as always, daily index. They come up with this wonderful scenarios that the auction prices are what's dictating the market, or the sentiment of the market. Well, if that's the case, maybe they should go back and analyse the figures over what's happened over the last 3 to 4 weeks in terms of the online auctions. I've seen Mount Druitt, the area of Mount Druitt, which is one of the canaries in the coal mine, as we've discussed for many times, Martin, and the values there of the old Housing Commission homes went right up to 550, and our other mate, Nathan's, spruiks, that the values there have gone up to 620 to 680. But let's just use my very doomsayish figures of 550, the values that went up there, say 6 months ago, up to 6 months ago. But now there were a couple of auctions held last week around Wayland. One of them got passed in, but a better property than the one that got passed in. No bids, or actually there was a bid at 328, but a better property was sold, and it was sold for $391,000. So look at the difference between the values from 6 months ago to what they're going for now in that area. So that's going to set the precedent. And okay, you could have one out-of-line sale, you could have two out-of-line sales. You could say, oh yeah, but the Housing Commission just let this one go, or the Housing Department let this one go, or that one go. But it was actually, one was Housing Department, the other one was a privately owned. The one that got sold was the privately owned property. So we look at the values there. Then you've got Sutherland Shire. In the Sutherland Shire, in God's country, we've seen that the devil's at work there in God's country, and Lindsay Davids just let his guard down. Come on, Lindsay, do something about it, because the hedonics winning there as well. I mean, we've seen values in some parts of the Sutherland Shire go down by $200,000 to $300,000. Now, they're not feeling it as yet, and I mean, it's incredible that these are the real figures. These are the real numbers that need to be shared, need to be posted. And then you've got posts from Melbourne, obviously, and commercial is one of my current interests at the moment. What's happening with a small commercial because of the pain that the SMEs are going through.
Yeah. The commercial sector is looking pretty sick. I agree with you. And interestingly, the number of SMEs that I survey, particularly in the retail sector, but other sectors too, they're all up against it. I'm seeing thousands and thousands of businesses who chose not to go for the government support because they couldn't afford essentially to borrow more in the interim. And so I think a lot of those are going to look pretty sick.
They're going to hit the wall. They're going to hit the wall hard. I've been talking to three liquidators, liquidating agencies or firms, and I've been talking to three of them, obviously discussing various areas, mainly cafes and restaurants, and quite frankly, you can't do anything with them because of my business brokering license. But the information that's coming out and what people are saying, what people are inquiring, at the end of the day, it's exactly what you're saying. It's better for them to close the doors now than it is to try and trade out of this. They will never trade out of this. There's one shoe company that's got 5 outlets at the moment, and right now the best offer that they've got on the table for all their inventory and all the stock is 10 cents in the dollar. That's a best case scenario, and if they don't take that, within a month or so, that offer will probably go down to 5 cents in the dollar. But that's the sort of stuff that we're seeing. And how many, after this pandemic, after the lockdown, how many people are really going out to the shops to buy a new pair of shoes, or how many people are going out to the shops to buy a new dress or a handbag or a suit for them? People are thinking about what food they're going to put on the table in a month's time, in 2 months' time, in 3 months' time, about school fees and other essentials, how they're going to pay for the leases of the vehicles, because the majority of the vehicles are leased. They're not outrightly owned by people, as you know. So all these things, and yet the government and people seem to think that we're going to, all of a sudden, the lockdown, is going to be lifted, and we're going to be running around buying all sorts of, $2 items and stuff coming over from overseas. I don't think so.
No. Well, the RBA earlier in the week said that they thought unemployment would be at 7%, down the track, right? So peak of 10% coming down to 7%. So we know that unemployment's going to be higher than it was. And we also know that a lot of the government support mechanisms are going to disappear at the end of September. At the same time, by the way, as the banks basically will stop those interest and principal holidays. So there's going to be huge financial pressure on households and businesses through the second half of the year. And in fact, even Frydenberg yesterday said that it's going to get more tricky before it gets easier. So I don't think we're going to see a V shape. No, it might be a U shape, might be an L shape. But this is going to have a profound impact on households and finances, and therefore on small businesses. I guess that's an interesting question then, with the market beginning to open up again and, open houses potentially going to be available, people going to want to put their properties on the market at the moment? What do you think?
Well, I think that's look. Although all the indicators that you and I talk about, and quite a number of the people that you have on your show, Martin, we often discuss is that there are more negative indicators that are going to push the prices further down, and we've still got a long way to go down before we start going up, whether it be V shape, U shape, L shape, S shape, whatever shape you want it to be. We still have a long way to go. As you said, we're not really going to know the full effect of it till later on in the year anyway, when all these subsidies, all these government grants and everything else is that they stop. Now, in terms of the sentiment, however, because that's what a lot of the majority of the industry and the majority of the people would go on is the emotional sentiment. Well, that's the good news, isn't it? The good news that we've been given is that, gee whiz, the lockdowns have been somewhat lifted or unrestricted for open house inspections, and we are going to now have the auctioneers, doing the show or at the actual residence itself to get to rope other people in emotionally. So that's the good news. But when you look at it on the other side of the coin, the bad news is, well, that's going to have a reverse effect in terms of listings on market. I feel that there are going to be a lot more people going to be listing properties on market. So supply and demand. You've got a situation where you're going to have a lot more supply than what you have demand. We're already struggling, as I said in previous shows. This time around, 17,000 was the mark. Now, we're tracking around 17,500 listed properties on the benchmark that I've used, and that's the domain benchmark in the Sydney region. And because closer to early in the year, and as things started heating up again, there were only 13,500 properties on the market at the beginning when the market was relatively hot, and you need to buy because prices are going to go through the roof and they're going to skyrocket. And then as more people got confident with that, more properties dropped on the market, and guess what? The things just fizzled out. And you and I spoke about the $17,000 mark. We've reached it. We've gone past it. So I think I'm keeping a close eye on it. It's still tracking at about 17,500. There's a lot more properties obviously available for sale. It's just that I use the domain benchmark because it just gives me a better geographical understanding of the Sydney region. And although there's about 15-17% more, but we won't go into that. The main thing is that the consistency of these figures have shown that there's as more properties have come on the market. Well, guess what? The heat has also come off the market. Now, if this good news is going to mean that more properties are going to come on the market, well, guess what? The buyers aren't there. People are more conscious about how they're going to pay for their bills in 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months time than what they are about buying a new property. Yes, you do have cashed up buyers and they'll jump in, but at the end of the day, the difference between asking prices and settlement prices are vastly different. I ring around for clients. I ring around all over Sydney for clients for inquiring on price guides and that, and I talk to the agents. An agent may want 1.2, 1.3 for their property. Doesn't mean that I can't offer 900. Just because that's the guide doesn't mean I can't go in at 900 and then let's start getting real. That's what's happening. But those figures, unfortunately, because the mainstream they subscribe to the hedonic late to the party daily index, and as we know, those figures, best case scenario, they're 60 to 72 days behind. And the new stats, and they don't even want to calculate the new stats because according to them, they don't have enough numbers to calculate the stats. So, I mean, lo and behold, it's a magic show out there.
Well, yes, it's interesting, as they've said, we might withdraw the daily index if the volume is too low. I guess the other point that's interesting is there's a lot of prices not disclosed now around the traps, right? So that is another indicator of probably agreed prices being lower than the agent would want to disclose.
Definitely, exactly. You've got an industry that the people are very boastful of what they do, and they beat their chests whenever they do something half right. They're forever swinging off the balconies and chandeliers in the properties that they've sold, and kissing signboards and whatnot in their shows, in the videos that they post online, as how wonderful they are. But at the end of the day, when they don't disclose it, it just shows the character. It just shows the lack of confidence that the industry has in terms of the sales, and that is going to show more and more. The other indicator that's very seldom talked about and hasn't been talked about for many years, which I've been pining on about for a long time, is the rental market. We're almost at 30,000 rental properties listed in the Sydney region, and that's been growing, astronomically. It's and yet, rental values have gone down, but the mainstream media and the hedonic and the Louis and the square meter research and the square inch research companies and so forth, they don't talk about these things. Why? Because it doesn't give doesn't paint the positive picture that they want to paint. Let's be real. I've always said these property portals have got the richest source of information, because we put a lot of information on the back end in order for things to happen on the back end on website, regardless of the fact that prices aren't disclosed. We still have to put the price that the property got sold at before we can change certain headings on the front end and on the advertised pages. And yet they don't use the information. That's live. That's real live. And yet they're restricted. The regulators need to get a hold of this. The regulators need to do a lot more, and they need to make the industry a lot more transparent than what it has been, particularly now, because this is when people are going to jump in unnecessarily. They're going to be hoodwinked into different purchases, or it's a future, and the future is becoming is very bleak to from a government and economic level, let alone from putting a noose around your neck. And let's not forget that that's what a mortgage is. It's a death warrant that you put around your neck for the next 30 years. It's a death pledge that's around your neck for the next 30 years. And why aren't the transactions more transparent than they have been?
Well, I agree with you, Edwin, on that the level of disclosure is pretty appalling, and the information that is publicly available is manipulated and presented in ways that aren't necessarily completely accurate, or at least obscure a lot of the detail that people need to get to. I guess it's also just worth reflecting on the dynamics. New South Wales, for example, have announced that they're going to fast track new developments. So they're going to try and get more building happening because they want to support the economy, and they're trying to actually argue against stamp duty and move to land tax to try and move the economy forward. In other words, try and drive more property transactions. So what we're seeing is still the state government putting all its eggs in the property basket to try and actually engineer a recovery.
Yeah, and it's really the going arse end about all this, aren't they? I mean, this is as convoluted as whether the coronavirus started in Wuhan, or whether it was deliberately released from labs, or whether Donald Trump had anything to do with it, or whoever else. It's just one of these arguments that it's just going around in circles. It's not really helping anybody, other than the fact that it's creating a lot of confusion. But here's the thing, Martin. Here's the thing. You can build a high-rise development. And this is what they propose. This is what the minister proposes, right? To build a high-rise development in the northwest. These high-rise developments comprising of about 3,000 apartments and a shopping centre and the like. This pandemic. What it's going to do is going to change our lifestyles, and people are going to be more encouraged to go to smaller shops, strip shops outside of the city region than what they are going into cluster or into high density areas, for starters, right? Secondly, these high rise developments have catered for overseas people anyway, investors anyway. So are we going to really have that? Is the confidence going to be there for the overseas market to come back in? I don't think so. Not from what I'm getting on the ground over in Asia. They're thinking about looking after the principal places of residences there, let alone investing in an unknown. And without going into all the economics and political side of things. Now, with the high-rise development, in some instances, you can build a high-rise tower with 50 to 100 workers working on there, right? So if that's to create jobs, you've only directly employed 50 to 100 people in a high-rise, because everything's like a jigsaw puzzle. You just put it all together. It's Lego blocks. Now, but the thing is, medium density, on the other hand, you could have up to 30 tradespeople go through one property at a time. And medium density makes more sense because you don't have people living on top of each other like you do in these high-rise developments. Secondly, you don't have to dig as deep, and the foundations don't have to be as deep and then take on all the other concerns that you see with Opal Tower, Mascot Tower, and every other tower that's built about the place in the major capital cities. So if they're talking about creating jobs for construction, well, go medium density. If you really want to go that, it makes more sense. There's close to 85,000 blocks privately owned by different developers. At the skirts of the mountain and going south and north. Why doesn't the government look into that? In terms of and giving people room to experience a bit of sunlight, room to experience a bit of movement, and being able to move, being able to have a pet, being able to although the backyards are getting smaller, but who wants to mow along anyway? You've still got a bit of room to walk around. You can create parks. You can create a lot of diverse recreational facilities there for the young people as well. But they're not interested in that. They're just interested in the overseas dollar. Now, on top of that, now you're talking about land tax. Any time that the government has introduced any type of grant, what happens? The immediate happens. The equivalent, if not more, goes on top of the value of the property. So it's not going to do anything. So to avoid all that, there's already close to 20,000 apartments in Sydney alone for sale anyway. Why don't you start buying them? Buy obviously at a discounted price, rather than build. Now, if you're going to build, Martin, the government needs to employ a first-tier builder. Now, a first-tier builder will tell you that to build, let's say, without going into all the ins and outs of it, it would cost anywhere between $320,000 to $360,000 per unit, right? Because it's easier to work at per unit cost in construction of the high rise. Then, so 300. That's to build. If you want to build it properly, the reason why they haven't been built properly, and the reason why the Leaning Tower of Mascot and the Leaning Tower of Opal, the falling over, is because they weren't built properly, and they shaved on the construction. They were building them at. Mascot probably only cost them probably 120, 140 at that time when they were building it, and Opal, they probably spent no more than 240 when they should have been spending a lot more. So you've got to shave the cost in the construction and the way that you build things in order to make any type of for those numbers to stack up. So. Unless so when you take that into consideration, the value of the land and everything else, well, you're better off buying stuff that's already on the market at a much cheaper price, aren't you? I mean, that would make, I don't know, it just makes a little bit more sense in my head.
Well, I agree with you, Edwin. And of course, the other point there is it's like when you drive a new car away, right? You immediately take a hit. And the same with if you buy new, you've probably paid top dollar to start with, and then the value is not necessarily going to go up from that point, particularly now. So to me, just resurrecting those old strategies just indicates just how bankrupt the overall planning and economic thinking is in the state. And by the way, it's not just here in New South Wales, it's pretty much across the country, right?
Right.
We need a different way of thinking about property going forward. And, I think you make a very good point about the lifestyle and, the living environment that people are in. People will have spent many weeks being locked away in these high-rise buildings and, not being able to get up and down because you can't have more than so many people in the lift at the same time. It should be a wake-up call that we need a different way of thinking about future development.
Yeah, and as I said before, and can you imagine the bloody dunnies would have got a caning? The sewerage price would have got an absolute caning in all this time. I'm surprised that we haven't heard anything. But then again, we haven't heard anything because the strata companies, the owners corporations, don't want us to know what buildings are got major defects now. Other than everything else that's problem there. You've got to change the governments. If they were really serious about reducing costs, they would get rid of other duties that are charged along the way from buying the land to the finishing of construction. GST, for example, builders and developers pay GST, which are often the case they don't recover. And get rid of that. We won't. No. But what I'm trying to get at is once you start reducing or giving grants that are shown that as I said, the developers and the builders and the vendors are going to just tack that on top of the price anyway. It's just not going to happen. Look, to be honest with you, Martin, I don't think. I think it's La La Land at the moment anyway with that development up in the northwest that they're proposing, with 3,000 dwellings and then mixing housing with tenants, other private tenancies and private owners. There are greater choices. If anything, I've been thinking a lot about is that there's going to be we'll probably see a big exodus from the city regions more into the urban fringes for people to, particularly people that are cashed up that can go up and buy, and more so people that have now realised that, hey, I don't have to go into the city to work. I can work remotely from home. I can work remotely. So why would I want to live in a two bedroom dog box when the equivalent can buy me a freestanding home and new further out west? And the government needs to start thinking about that. They need to start putting in place real infrastructure, as you and I have said, Martin. All roads lead to Sydney. All roads lead to inner Melbourne. They don't lead anywhere else out. And and the government should really now think about really decentralising these major hubs because they're not. The case in point is CBA. You've taken 7,000 jobs from Parramatta and Homebush and placed them in the heart of Redfern. Purpose-built facility in Redfern. When now what's going to happen to all the strip shops and restaurants and coffee shops and that around Parramatta? So they're just nothing. It's just short money grab scenarios that aren't really helping things and aren't going to help our lifestyle in the future. So I think the exodus there's going to be a big exodus. I feel, like I said, I'm not always right, but I think I've got something going with this one.
Well, I think you're righter than most, Edwin. It's just timing sometimes. But so to sum up, then there may be a little bit of good news with regards to opening up of the existing houses for visitors, but actually the broader strategic questions are still there, and frankly, there's very little intent that we're seeing to really address these issues in a strategic way, and that's a disappointment.
Yeah, it is, and it has been a disappointment in a lot of cases. And let's bring it down. Let's bring it down to the narrative of our conversation, Martin, and that is the opening of the houses once again open for inspections and the auction scenarios.
Yep.
Let's bring it down to now. my question is the real estate industry, is the industry itself, are they going to be diligent, and are they going to be proactive as well, like you and I spoke about before all this? I mean, I'm sure the government watched our videos, because a lot of the stuff that you and I discussed 3-4 months ago, they now only just starting to implement it, with regard to social distancing, with regard to sanitizing, with regard to making sure that the little people that come in with the adults don't touch things, or they keep people, that the tie kickers stay at home and so forth. But is the industry going to be diligent? Because if they're not, let me tell you, there's a bigger wave that's going to hit the industry, and that's going to hit the investors, the investment market, or once this dies down a little bit, and that is the new regulations that came in earlier in the year, with regards to with regards to tenancies, with regards to workplace policies, with regards to proper supervision. Now we've got insurance companies that don't want to insure the real estate industry. We've gone down from 5 to about, I think, 1.5, maybe 2 insurance companies that may look at our industry to insure us for professional indemnity, public liability, and the like. And let's not forget, an open for inspection, just because you've got an office at Parramatta CBD, and you do an open for inspection in North Parramatta at a house, guess what? The workplace environment is also translated to wherever you're having the open. Yeah, and for owners of real estate offices, the vehicles that the agents are traveling in become a workplace environment as well. So all these regulations, all these new changes that have come in, and insurance companies are keeping a very watchful eye on this. So you've got COVID-19, you've got all these sanitizing policies. Are agents going to keep to these regulations in their enthusiasm? Let's call it enthusiasm. I won't be rude. Let's just call it enthusiasm. And their enthusiasm to get hundreds of people through open homes, so that they can get an emotional buyer and pay over the odds. Are they going to adhere to all these changes? As much as I would like to think, Martin, I don't think so. I really don't. I'm really doubtful. If anything, it's a 50-50 call. But guess what? More agents are going to be sued. More officers or licensees in charge are going to be sued, because they are not adhering to a lot of these this regulatory or things that have been put in place in order to protect the tenants, in order to protect the potential buyers, in order to protect their staff members, and in order to protect their work environment. So I don't know, but I said open houses are going to have to extend to possibly now. In this case, now I think that they're going to have to extend to, quite frankly, minimum having an hour open for inspection, if you're going to have the amount of people that they propose to have at the open house inspections to attend auctions. And people are going to have to get used to that. And because one of the things, as I've said, Martin, I'm very, very particular about, and I can share with you, I've been able to assist a few of your followers that have DM'd me, and I've been able to help them out with some of the tenancy issues, and that is that the tenants get left behind. The tenants get put on the shelf. They get forgotten. Well, it's about time that the tenants rise up and start demanding more of the rights to be heard as well. And it's within their rights, because they've been paying. They've been paying the asking amount of rent, and they've been keeping to that agreement, and it's binding. And now, if the agents want more time, if the agents want this, if the industry wants more of this and more of that, well, guess what? Give me something in return.
Yeah, very important message there. I think, particularly for tenants, as you say, they often get the damp end of the stick. And kudos to you when you actually called out some of these precautions that people should be taking way before it was officially announced. We'll put a link to that other video, I think, because I think those handy tips with cling film was particularly useful. But it's just people's habits. I mean, it's and you've got to curb those. Yep.
But also the question is how many officers how many of it can afford to have 2 people are open for inspections, Martin? Not a lot.
Yeah. Now
not a lot, because.
Yeah, the economics are definitely getting crushed. Came out in the ABS survey that that particular industry has been, definitely hit as well. So a lot of issues. But at the end of the day, the industry has, I think, to come clean about some of these things and change its behaviours, because otherwise it's just going to go into an ever decreasing circle, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's going to be a detriment to they're going to be a detriment to themselves. And like I said, insurance companies are watching this very, very closely. There's a good friend of mine, George from ITC on Twitter, and he's got Agent Safe, a program that should be used by more real estate agents, and they're not looking at the back end. They're not looking at how to better support the staff, better support the tenants, better support their landlords, and better support themselves in order to get through a lot of these anomalies, which they the next wave for investors is going to be bigger, Martin. Let me tell you, COVID-19 is like getting into a ring with a kindergarten kid, or me getting in the ring with Uppercut Adams. It's just a piece of cake. But it's the next phase is like trying to get in the ring with Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali. It's going to be fierce, and that is the upkeep, predominantly the upkeep, maintenance, and disclosure of any hidden issues by the property managers and by the owners, disclosure of material facts. And quite frankly, George and I feel that anywhere between 40 to 60% of properties don't comply, and that's rental properties. So it's the next squeeze, and it's going to hit hard.
Yeah, well, a very important warning there, Edwin. Thanks for your time today. As always, great to catch up with you, and we should do it again sometime soon.
Definitely. Next time you'll either see me with a shaved head or with a ponytail.
Place your bets. Well, actually, maybe we should ask our viewers, which would they prefer to see?
Oh, well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. But $1 for those per contribution, and that can go to charity, man.
Thanks for your time today, Edwin. See you soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Martin. All the best.
Bye.